Welcome to the applicant webinar for the Native Hawaiian Library Services Grant Program. My name is Anthony Smith, Associate Deputy Director within the Office of Library Services. In this webinar, I'll be providing information about the Native Hawaiian Library Services Grant Program. I'll review eligibility, go over the application process, the different application components, and also offer you a few tips and suggestions. Our goal is to help make the application process as easy as possible while helping to ensure that all application requirements are met. The Native Hawaiian Library Services grants are competitive awards for up to 2 years and up to $150,000. Cost share is not required. The anticipated period of performance for these awards is September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2024. To be eligible for this program, you must be a nonprofit organization that primarily serves and represents Native Hawaiians, as the term is defined in Title 20 of the U.S. Code. The term Native Hawaiian refers to an individual who is a citizen of the United States and a descendant of the Aboriginal people who, before 1778, occupied and exercised sovereignty in the area that now comprises the state of Hawaii. If you are an ineligible institution, we encourage you to partner with an eligible institution on a project. While you cannot be the lead applicant, you may be able to apply through a partnership with an eligible institution and receive funding to support activities in that manner. Please also note that a grantee with an active Native Hawaiian Library Services grant may not apply for another Native Hawaiian Library Services grant that would have an overlapping period of performance with the active grant. The Native Hawaiian Library Services grants have 3 main goals with the objectives that correspond to each goal. The first goal and objectives correspond to the Digital Services Project category on the program information form, and they are to improve digital services to support needs for education, workforce development, economic and business development, health information, critical thinking skills, and digital literacy skills. Objective 1.1 supports the establishment and refinement of digital infrastructure, platforms, and technology. Objective 1.2 supports preservation and access to information and resources through digitization. The second goal and objectives correspond to the educational programming project category on the program information form, and they are to improve educational programs related to specific topics and content areas of interest to library patrons and community-based users. Objective 2.1 supports the identification of the needs and interests of learners. 2.2 supports the development and implementation of classes, events, teaching tools, resources, and other educational services. And 2.3 supports the evaluative assessment of library-based approaches to teaching and facilitation. The third goal and objectives correspond to the Preservation and Revitalization project category on the program information form, and they are to enhance the preservation and revitalization of Native Hawaiian culture and language. Objective 3.1 supports the development of efficient strategic partnerships within, across, and outside Native Hawaiian communities. 3.2 supports the preservation of content of unique and specific value to Native Hawaiian communities. And 3.3 supports the sharing of content within and or beyond Native Hawaiian communities. You can find the notice of funding opportunity on our website. Make sure to read the NOFO carefully and follow all of the links. Pages 6 and 7 of the notice of funding opportunity includes a table that lists all of the application components, what kind of format they need to be submitted as, and which file name to use when you're submitting your application package. Use this list as a checklist for all the documents you will need to submit by April 1st. You want to make sure your application is complete so that it's not rejected simply because you missed or forgot a document. Now, this will give you a sense of the timeline and how the process works. Grant proposals go through peer review. Reviewers will read your proposals and evaluate them to make sure you have responded to the notice of funding opportunity and that your proposal project has potential for success. We will present the reviewer comments and scores to the IMLS director, who will then make funding decisions based on the reviewer's evaluations and the overall goals of the program and of the agency. Announcements will be made in August for a September 1st start date. Now, to get a better idea about how to align your project with the 3 categories, you can use our awarded grant search. Starting on the IMLS homepage, click on the grants at the top of the page and then click on Search Awarded Grants. From here, you can search Native American Hawaiian Library Services under Program and select FY21 under the fiscal year and then hit Submit. If you click on an application log number, you'll find a short description for each one. And under the description, there is a PDF document that you can download, which is the proposal narrative, schedule of completion, and digital product form, if any, existed for that particular project. Okay, so now I'm going to review the questions that you should address in your proposal. As part of the IMLS supplementary information form, you will include an abstract. Now, here are some key questions to address in the abstract. You want to identify the lead applicant and, if applicable, any collaborators. Describe the need, describe the problem or challenge your project will address and how it was identified. List the high-level activities you will carry out and identify the associated timeframe. Identify who or what will benefit from your project. Specify your project's intended results and describe how you will measure your performance in achieving your intended results. If your proposed project is selected for funding, your abstract may be published online. As such, it must not include any sensitive or confidential information. Your application narrative should have 3 main sections: a project justification, project work plan, and project results. In your project justification, tell the reviewers which program goal and associate objectives of the Native Hawaiian Library Services Grants Program will your project address? What need, problem, or challenge will your project address, and how was it identified? Describe how you have used demographic information, economic circumstances, condition assessments, and other relevant data from reliable sources to define the need, problem, or challenge and develop the scope for the project. Who is the target group for your project and how have they been involved in the planning? A target group refers to those who will be most immediately and positively affected by your project. Be specific by identifying particular age groups, community members with particular needs, and or other types of target audiences. Identify the number of individuals in the target group or in each target group if you identify more than one. Who are the ultimate beneficiaries for this project? Beneficiaries refers to those who are likely to be aided in the long term by your project. They may or may not be the same as your target group. Identify the number of individuals who will benefit from your project in the long term. If reliable and defensible counts are possible. Otherwise, describe the characteristics of the beneficiaries you expect to be served eventually by your project. Now, your project work plan section should address the following questions. What specific activities will you carry out and in what sequence? What are the risks to the project and how will you mitigate them? Who will plan, implement, and manage your project? What time, financial, personnel, and other resources will you need to carry out the activities? Identify any partner and or collaborator organizations that will contribute to your project and describe their roles. How and with whom will you share your work's general findings, lessons learned? What data will you collect? How often and from what sources in order to measure your performance in terms of effectiveness, quality, and timeliness? I'll discuss more about this in just a minute. Does your project include any digital content, resources, assets, software, or data sets? If so, be sure to create a digital products form. Now, examples of the digital product include any data visualizations that are informing the project work, online materials such as web pages about the project, digital content products or images. Now for your project results section, it should include the following information. What are your project's intended results and how will they address the need, problem, or challenge you have identified in the project justification? How will the knowledge, skills, behaviors, capabilities, and attitudes of the intended audience change as a result of your project? What tangible products will result from your project? How will you sustain the benefits of your project? How will you continue to support the project, its results, and or new models that are created beyond the grant period? For example, will there be ongoing institutional and or community support of project activities or products? Do you have a demonstrated buy-in from potential stakeholders? What are your plans for sustaining any digitized collections, software, and supporting documentation, information systems, and any other technology tools? The Native Hawaiian Library Services Grant Program will use the following 3 performance measurements as a basis for understanding the level of performance by the grant program as a whole and by each award supported through it. For effectiveness, are the activities being supported by the program contributing to improving digital services, improving educational programs, and/or enhancing the preservation and revitalization of Native American cultures and languages. For quality, is the program meeting user requirements and expectations? And for timeliness, is each activity being completed on time and as proposed? Now, each applicant must identify what data they will collect, how often, and from what source in order to produce these measurements. You're welcome, but not required to use the fillable chart linked in the NOFO. So now let's talk about key components of your application package. Make sure to include the application components listed in the NOFO and included here on this slide. Conditionally required documents include your proof of private nonprofit status, your federally negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, if you plan to include indirect cost in your budget, and the digital products plan if you are proposing to generate digital content resources, assets, or software. Again, these are all conditionally required documents depending upon your situation. You'll need to include an IMLS budget form and budget justification following the standard budget categories listed on this slide. In the budget justification, explain the purpose and cost breakdown for each expense listed in the IMLS budget form. Now, your budget should include $3,000 for IMLS directed travel for each year of the budget. And cost share is not required for this program. You may submit a reasonable number of supporting documents that supplement your narrative and support the project description. Supporting documents should help IMLS staff and reviewers envision your project in greater detail, but they should not be used to introduce new topics nor to continue answers to the narrative questions. Give each document a clear descriptive title at the top of the first page. You can choose to include any of the supporting documents listed here on this slide. Make sure to submit a complete application with all required documents. Don't forget all key personnel listed must have resumes. Check the list of conditionally required documents, for example, the digital products plan or proof of private nonprofit status. Another conditionally required application component is the federally negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. If you have one, remember that indirect cost rate at the time of the award stands until the end of the award. Cost rate agreement must extend through September 2022. And then supporting documents might include needs assessment, letters of support, planner reports. Okay, so now we'll provide a few tips to help you with the application process. First off, please register early. There are 3 places where you must register your organization in order to be able to submit a proposal: DUNS, SAM, and grants.gov. You must be registered in SAM, which is the System for Award Management. It's important to keep in mind is that your SAM registration is good for just 1 year and must be renewed. It takes time to process the renewal, so we recommend checking your status early on. If it's not your job to track your SAM registration, become friends with the person at your organization whose job it is to do so, and make sure this is in place well in advance of the application deadline. Grants.gov is the portal through which you will file your application. Allow several weeks for the registration process here. And even if you know you're registered, make sure you know who is authorized for your institution and make sure they know their password. Staff change, people retire, and passwords get misplaced. In fact, if you don't know for absolutely sure that this is all in place now, I strongly recommend checking on it as soon as we get done here today. Again, if it's not something you want to be trying to accomplish anywhere close to the application deadline, it's just too much. Okay. So here are a few application tips based on our experience. Get some feedback and revise your narrative. Ask 2 or 3 people who are not involved in the grant to read the proposal and provide feedback on ideas, structure, and grammar and spelling. Consider their feedback and revise accordingly. Proofread the final version carefully. Use the spell check feature. And then coordinate with your administration to submit all your application components through grants.gov before the deadline. Start today, organizing what you need to apply and understanding who in your organization can help confirm DUN, SAM, and grants.gov registrations. But remember to save all your documents as PDF files. Grants.gov cannot convert them for you. Upload application files to grants.gov prior to the deadline. And I would encourage setting a date prior to the deadline in case something unforeseen comes up requiring more time. Use grants.gov workspace. It's a great way to organize the work of the application progress in one work environment and with any of your work partners who have a role to play in the application prep and submission. And be sure to double check the uploaded files against the table of application components in the notice of funding opportunity. That is your checklist to ensure that your application is completed. And then finally, for questions about eligibility, your narrative and project activities, the digital products plan, or your budget, including allowability of cost, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. For questions about application requirements and deadlines, our 2 wonderful, outstanding program specialists are available to help, Maeve Kudrell and Sheena Ofokwa. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to receiving your application. And as always, best wishes from IMLS.